Here we go. Hopefully it's working. Switch over and away. Dave here, how are you? Today is the 2nd of the 2nd, 2020. That's an interesting date. And also, it's a date that you guys in the States and everyone else in the world will be in agreement as to how we should say the date. All right, today, also, hope you've had a good week and looking forward to today's show. You'll see here, Ian Kerry is with me today and he has already set up. He didn't even really ask me, he just started setting up. As soon as he walked in the garage, where can I put this? Where can I put that? So that'll be good. What we're going to do first of all is we're going to have a look at, well, as I said, Ian's going to be here. He's actually out in the green room waiting, but we're going to have a look at the CNC first. So I'm doing a prototype dust hood for my CNC machine. And it's very interesting. There's a few things I'm wanting to address in it, but I thought I would show you one part that I'm going to actually machine with the CNC. Now, for those of you that don't know what CNC stands for, it's Computer Numeric Control. I always thought it was Computer Navigated Cutting, but no, I was wrong. I'm going to see if I can find this part here. I have found it. So this is a quick video on the thing's going to show you a preview of how it's going to cut it out. So cutting, and then a rebate there. And around the outside, a couple of times, we have the keys in as well, the tabs I should say, so it doesn't go flying around the room, which things have done before for me. All right, so what we'll do is go out to that, but before then, I've also got a quick interesting thing that happened today. I was vacuuming the floor and with the dust extractor here, and there's something blocking it because it wasn't sucking properly. So there was all sorts of things I tried. I ended up taking the hose off and ran this basically, let's call this a 1/2 inch diameter dowel. I ran it down the hose and just kept on feeding it down, and it knocked this out. Now this, I'll bring it round to your side. If you're cleaning up the floor at all, you might pick up little things like that. And it was collecting all of the bits of wood chip and all the rubbish, and it was struggling to do anything. So now it's working perfectly again. One other little thing, if you take the hose out from that end and put the pointy end, the nozzle in, and shove it in there, it actually fits into the inlet for the separator, and it can suck a reverse charge basically through the hose and clear it that way. If it's kind of lodged itself in going one direction, it might clear going the other way. Just a quick little tip. I thought I might share that with you. All right. I've got to make sure I don't cut myself on this chainsaw sharpening jig that Ian's put here. I'm going to switch the cameras around and we'll hook straight into the CNC. Here we go. I've got to come out. I've set everything up to save a lot of time. Make sure that you can still see it. Yep, we're on the right side. I've got to read through my 10 commandments. Turn on the control box, done everything there. I've homed the machine. I do need to turn the variable frequency drive on. And I have set it to metric. The code is set in there. It's all looking good. I need to turn the dust extractor on. Now I haven't got the hood here. I'm talking loud again, aren't I? Because I've got the emails on. I haven't got the hood that hangs around here to suck everything up. So let me turn it on. It's not. Oh, wrong one. I'm an idiot. I've turned the wrong one again on. There we go. Whoop. Don't get sucked up there. All right. Here we go. Cycle start. Going to go over and stand beside the auto stop just in case. Spinning her up. Beautiful. I'm going to come back here. What I'm using is a spiral upcut. So hence I'm getting a little bit of tear out on the ply at the moment. I didn't want to use a spiral down because I didn't want it to push down too hard as it's doing the cuts. The next one it's going to do is a rebate. Whoop! Didn't grab the tab too well there. And that'll stop there and it'll go to do the outside of the cup. Whilst it's going on the other part, actually I'm just going to leave it there. I was thinking about getting it out, but I'll leave it. And coming around to the last pass, I'm going to get myself out of this room just in case I haven't set the depth correct. Okay, the next pass is going to do the tabs. Two tabs on the sides. That was the plan. One at the back. Coming down this side, it'll do another two tabs. And up and out and turn itself off. There we go. So you can see there's a fair bit of mess there. I'm going to drive it backwards. And let's see if it's going to release. Yeah. Those tabs, again, weren't thick enough. See, that's the tab there. Just wasn't thick enough. I may have set it for imperial to a 1/2 inch instead of metric, but that's good. That's lovely. I'll give you a hint. This is for a polycarbonate viewing window, so I can still see what's happening. So there we go. I'll go back into the other room, turn this machine off so it's not making a racket in the background, and this one as well. Yes, I want to exit. Okay, done. Give me a second. Back in, turn the other camera on. And we're doing quite well for time. Main camera. Switching now. There you go. Again, I do these kind of things because there's a lot of people really love to see CNC stuff. It was nearly a she sells seashells. Anyway, I enjoy doing it, obviously, because I've got the machine. And I understand people like doing box making and tool sharpening, tips for machines, all that kind of stuff. So again, I try and cover as much as I can. If the CNC isn't your cup of tea, I'm sorry, what can I say? The next thing, of course, is we're going to have Ian come in here. So I'm going to ask Ian if he'll want to grace us. Ian, how are you? Just passing, were you? Saw the light on?
Just passing, sort of dropping. Yeah.
I'm going to move this and we're going to do Vicky knee, camera on a stick. Oh, sorry, not the camera, the microphone on a stick. And so move that to there and take that off my hip. All right, there you go. Ian, now I can listen to what you're going to say. Now, you're telling me that this sharpening jig is a family invention.
Yeah, it's a bit of an heirloom, this one. I actually had to drag it out of the mothballs and clean it off a bit today. It's been sprayed up with some rust preventative. My dad actually made this jig to mount on a guide bar of a chainsaw that he first purchased in 1956 when he needed a method to be able to sharpen chains off the saw. And so he made up this little adapter with a wheel off an old guide bar, which can be slid along the shaft here.
Yep.
And yeah, basically you can mount any guide bar and chain up on it. that'll fit over the studs. And the older saws, of course, had large studs. A lot of the smaller saws just wouldn't fit over it. Guide bars like this fella off a current day mini saw just wouldn't fit there, so it doesn't work. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring along and set up with the old original type file and joint, which is still currently available and has gone through the decades very much unchanged. It still works in the same manner, still does a very, very good job, and it's probably the most accurate way to file a chainsaw chain, along with being the slowest.
What brand is that?
This one was made by Nigran, which was the original manufacturers of it, and it was bought. The patent was bought out by Oregon. Oregon then produced them and still do.
Right.
Still also make a version of the same thing. The patent expired many, many years ago, so still make a version of the same thing that they market that we have in the shop today. And yeah, it enables you to set your file up to get the exact right angle, so 30-degree angle for cross cutting.
Yep.
You can take the round file out and replace it with a flat file and bring it around at 90 degrees for doing the depth gauges, or rakers as some people call them.
Well, that brings me to an interesting point, Ian. Do you want to go through the terminology for each part of a blade? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people would just think, yeah, a blade's a blade, you put a file under it, and that's it. But there's a lot of limiters and all sorts of things. And hello, we've got all the special gear. Over to you again, Ian.
Okay, this is just a demonstration piece, obviously. I brought this up last time. We just quickly touched on some of the various points about chains and how it works. These are just plastic pieces, and they work very much. The cutter of a chainsaw chain works very much in the same way as a hand plane.
Yep.
In reverse, it sort of works. That does the job of the sole of the plane. So when the chain is traversing the guide bar, this bit kicks up, allows that to contact the wood. So you've got 2 points of contact.
Yes.
That scrapes along the wood, so the height of this depth gauge controls the angle of approach taken by the cutting blade. So that then determines the amount of bite that chain has. So
Do these limiters or depth gauges, do they get worn out at all?
they have to be filed. As you can see on this example, the top plate of the chain is angled towards the rear. So the more you file it back,
Yep.
the more it reduces the height difference from here to here. So you need to reduce the height of the depth gauge proportionately to maintain a 25th thou, which is the 25th thou or 0.65 of a millimetre. That's the clearance required for most chains. There's a couple of variations from that,
Right.
but in the most part, 0.65 of a mil or 25th thou, and there's a gauge for actually measuring that,
Yes.
which I was going to bring in, I promptly forgot that one, but anyway.
Probably. That's all right.
That's all
We've
right.
got plenty of time.
So
I was just checking how we're going for time.
different cutter styles. I touched briefly on this last time. This one's this one is a chisel type cutter. So you can see it's a very square format here, very, very sharp edge here. The benefit of that type of cutter is that in cross cutting, it only cuts each fibre of timber once, whereas a chamfer or a semi-chisel type chain that has a rounded profile, I'll put them side by side so you can see them.
You can take them down a bit closer and watch yourself on that chain.
So you can see the difference in the profile shape there. One's very square,
Yes.
and this one's got the rounded corner. As this one's travelling through the wood, the cutting edge here actually severs each fibre a number of times as it progresses around the radius of that turn, whereas the chisel cutter doesn't. It only cuts each fibre once, and that's what makes the chisel cutter so much faster.
So is it better for ripping or cross-cutting?
Cross-cutting.
Yeah.
you
Both of these are
can-
cross-cuts?
You can rip with it, but sharpened at a lesser angle.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, the only downside with this is that point, which is quite acute,
Yeah.
as opposed to a rounded edge here.
It's sharing the load.
It
This
actually
one's copying all of it.
all the work's been done by that one point.
Yeah.
So that type of cutter
Yes.
does tend to lose its edge a little more quickly than a semi-chisel cutter.
Right.
So they'll both cut the same sort of wood. They'll both cut hardwoods or softwoods or whatever. But in both cases, the chisel will cut faster but not hold its edge as long as the semi-chisel. So it's a bit of a trade-off each way. The other little fella here is it's also just a semi-chisel, but it's what they call still Pico Micro. So it's a 3/8 pitch chain, but a lower profile. So it's reduced height,
Yes.
and it's designed for the smaller consumer type saws. So your home handyman type saws. It's a lighter weight for better performance. Cuts a narrower kerf.
It looks to be kind of a combination between the two. Would I be correct there? at all,
Yeah,
Ian? It's
does,
rounded and
it does
and the
share.
chisel?
Yeah, it does share some similarities. It's not quite as rounded on here as this
no.
semi chisel, but yeah, still quite a good performing chain. And you can also buy now a full chisel version of that chain too for the
Alright.
lighter weight saws. So guys that are doing arborists that are doing tree lopping work and where they need to be able to cut stuff quickly, they can buy a chisel chain, and we sell quite a lot of that. And probably the biggest majority of our guys are using a chisel chain now.
Okay, so when they're getting that, they can. Let me see. Can they go here? Would that be a place for them to go? How long ago is that photo?
That photo was taken about 1982.
That's probably when I first moved to the mountains.
The VH Commodore there immediately alongside the Rodeo Ute was my demonstrator car back in the day.
Is that code for the one that you used to get to drive around?
That was my company demo car, yeah.
Yeah, I found that on your Facebook page.
Yeah, so a little bit of history there, and that's all about to change shortly. We've got plans before council for a complete redoing of the entire front of the property.
Right.
New service station building, new cafe, everything, all with
lovely.
PP again. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a huge undertaking.
So you'll be having breakfast there every morning, will you?
No, probably not.
So when are you retiring?
Retirement's happening at the end of this year.
Right.
Yeah, so
Good on you.
we're programmed to work out the end of this year. Won't be a full retirement. I'll still be doing a couple of days a week.
Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
They curse and swear at me and go crook at me all the time for forgetting things, but
Yeah.
it's,
Let's see how they go on their own.
yeah,
they'll
they'll
be
still
fine.
need me around.
They'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I hope they will anyway.
They should be fine. Okay, so we've done that. Now this stuff here. What's the rest of this stuff on the display, or
okay.
did you not want to talk about them?
Yeah, this is just to represent a file, just to show that
All right.
the relationship of the file in the cutter. The file has to sit in
You
the.
might need
in-
to tip it over a little bit so people can see it there.
that's
Ian.
it.
That's better.
The file needs to sit just a little bit up towards the top edge, so a little
Right.
bit of the file exposed at the top, and that's where a filing guide or filing jig like this is very important, because it allows the file to remove the damaged material from the correct part of the tooth. The damage only ever occurs around this corner and on the top. Tiny little bit on the side if you're cutting, if you're lopping stumps off or something like that, where you're cutting down close to the ground, you can get side damage there, and that will in turn cause the chain to not want to cut in a straight line. There's a whole bunch of things that I'll talk about in a minute about not cutting straight, because that's one of the biggest problems that people come to us with, is chainsaw, will cut so far into the log and then it won't cut any further, and then they've got smoke coming off. And
Would a carbide blade help them at all if they were down near the dirt at any time?
look, carbide blades are very good. Will hold their edge between 5 and 10 times longer than a conventional cutter. A conventional cutter, the part of the tooth that's actually doing the work is the chrome plating on the top face.
Yep.
And it's imperative that be maintained in good condition. When you're cutting timber that's got termite core in it, or you touch the dirt or anything like that, anything that damages that chrome edge and exposes the supporting metal underneath
Yep.
will render that chain
Okay.
useless. It won't cut, so you've then got to stop.
So if you've got a chain that it hasn't got shiny tops, I'm guessing the chrome's shot and it's gone. And
Yeah, look, we see a lot of chains damaged beyond repair. Normally you can get, hold this baby up.
that's all right.
That one's got a
Look
nice
after yourself.
nice shiny top to it, so you can see quite clearly the cutting surface there is in
What
good
size
order.
blade is that one?
That one's a 9/16 pitch chain.
There you go, Peter Woolworth. You'd be keen to see that one.
Oh yes. Oh, and Peter Woolworth. Yes, we do use the Stihl USG grinder. It's one of 4 grinders we have in the shop. I also have a grinder at home. Sometimes I sharpen chains in my sleep because we get so many of. So I have a grinder at home, but it's the one I have at home is an Italian-made unit marketed by Oregon. Particularly like it because it's a reversible motor, so you can grind into the cutter both sides. So your left and right hand cutters grinding into the cutter just by reversing the motor. There's still USG.
Come back around this side, Ian, because
USG
no one
doesn't.
can see you.
I was just going to show everybody the difference. This is one of the current quarter pitch chains, so you can see the difference in the size of cutters
Huge.
from what used to be to what we use a lot today in some of the little electric saws and the compacts. Very, very
Well,
stark
the cut is
difference.
a cut, isn't it? Like once you cut through, it's like a thin curved blade, I guess, on a table saw.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And the smaller chain with more teeth per inch gives a very, very fine cut. So the arborists and people that are doing tree care work where
Yes.
they want a very smooth cut, that little quarter
So
pitch
it doesn't
chain does a
damage the
beautiful
tree.
job. Yeah, it leaves such a smooth finish that
Yep.
the tree doesn't suffer any ill effects from it.
All right, well, I've been interrupting enough. You go for it.
Okay,
Have a
so
ball.
I touched on the reasons that the chain won't cut. I've got a chain here. This is very typical of the sort of things that we see on a daily basis. This is a chain I actually just grabbed off the bench to show. If you have a look at the point of the cutter, once the camera focuses, you'll see there's a little bit of a dark spot right on the point. It's a bit hard to see because
It's got the back wall, Ian.
no, hang on, I'll come up this way a bit better. There's that.
There we go.
That'll
So as
be
soon as
better.
it focuses on your wedding ring, you'll be right.
So as you can see a little bit of the base metal or the parent metal shining through, well, coming through as a darker patch to the chrome. So the point of all that is that the sharpening exercise, you've got to remove sufficient base material and chrome back to a clean, undamaged chrome edge.
Right.
That chain, if you give that 2 or 3 swipes with a file, it might take that damage away, but typically they need more than that to remove that amount of damage. And the chain that I've got set up here on this jig, it's actually got quite substantial damage to it. And just before we started the show, I gave it a bit of a test run to see, and it actually took 6 passes with the file before it actually removed all the damage off the cutter. Now I'll just pop one through here and just give it a bit of a run. Put the eyes on so we can see what we're doing. So you'll see that this jig has a little stopper that allows the file to drop into the gullet of the tooth, and you'll see there's a fair bit of the file sitting up proud of the top of the tooth. That promotes the correct contour so that you get the right angle back under here. This angle under here is the
You
the
keep doing
crucial
that,
one.
Ian. I'm going to grab the other camera and bring it in here so we can get some nice close-ups.
Okay. This undercut angle, I'll get this around the right way so you can actually see it. That angle is what you're trying to maintain by getting the file in the right place. So the relevance of the file represented by this piece of tube has to sit like so.
I'm going to get the other camera and let's see if it's going to make anything easier for you. How's that?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Does that look all right?
Yeah, that's great.
So we're not going to be able to look at your handsome features though, Ian.
No, that's right. I haven't got any, so that's fine. So with filing of any kind, the cutting action only takes place in the forward motion. So important to give a nice smooth push, lift up, and come back. 6 strokes. Now we should be able to see that.
Coming
Yeah.
closer.
That's pretty good. Might need maybe just one more, but we've still got just the tiniest little bit of damage there, but probably not going to pick it up on the camera. But yeah, that's pretty close. But as a comparison, we've probably taken nearly a millimetre off this cutter compared to the one in front, which we haven't taken anything off, and it's still got a fair amount of damage on it.
Right.
So that gives you some sort of idea of the amount of material that you sometimes need to remove to actually get a chain so that it's going to cut. So having done that, the other thing obviously you run through all of those cutters then, and they all have to be cut back to the same length. So you can use a number of methods to do that. A little set of calipers is a good idea. What I tend to do when I'm about to sharpen a chain, I tend to we clean the chain first so that you can actually see the extent of the damage. If you've got a chain that's like this one, hang on. No, that's not the one I was thinking of, sorry.
That's all right.
The one I was thinking of is right in front of me.
For the don't damage the sound. There we
So
go. Better sound.
this is a chain that I just grabbed today, and I've cleaned a number.
Against the black of your shirt might be good.
I've cleaned a number of the teeth to show the damage, but that's what the chain looked like before I cleaned it. And it's very, very hard when you've got that much sap and goo stuck all over the chain. It's very, very difficult to see what's actually wrong. So
Yep.
I always clean the chain before we attempt to sharpen it. I clean the chain and use a solvent to get all the oily sawdust and everything off it.
Yes.
And then using a wire buff, I buff each tooth individually, go around and buff them all clean so that you can see the extent of any damage to that chrome surface.
Yep.
And in this case, it's quite severe. You can see that in the
Right.
picture there.
I'm going to put this back up again on its own. And
So yeah, so after going around all of the cutters on that side, while you've got it set up at 30 this way, then it's a case of swapping it around the other side. Take the jig out, turn it around, reset this to 30 degrees the opposite way, and you go through and do all the other cutters on the other side, and making sure that you get all the cutters even side to side, so that the length of them from the front of the tooth to the back needs to be the same length. Very important.
do
Yeah.
you want me to switch cameras back again, or are you right?
Yeah, no, that's pretty good, I think, Dave. That gives them a nice close-up shot.
Okay.
Once you've done all the cutters, the next thing to do, and as I mentioned before, I forgot to bring the little tool, is a depth gauge measuring tool.
Right.
And it simply sits over the top of the cutter and allows the depth gauge to protrude through, and the face of the depth gauge is hardened, so you can just use a flat file and file away until you don't file any more of the depth gauge off, and that is at the correct height. That gives it the clearance between the cutting edge. So it allows that cutter to actually, because in operation that cutter actually tilts up. It sort of tilts upwards to give this the right approach angle to the timber to allow it to cut.
Mm-hmm.
So you go through and do all of those and get those all the right height, and hopefully the chain side of it is good to go. The other thing that you need to look at that's very important is the guide bar itself. This guide bar that we're using with the filing jig is it's got a number of nasty features on it, which I'll show you in a second. But this little fella is quite good too. You want to have a look at your guide bar and just check the edges. Make sure, if you can feel with your fingernail, if you can feel a burr that your nail catches on, that means that this rail has worn down more than the other. Now that problem is caused by the chain, and typically you would find that the cutters
So it's
on the
flaring,
opposite
it's flaring
side.
the running part of the bar.
That's right. So
Yep.
where that chain sits on the bar, if it's burring this side, it means that the cutters on this side are
Turn around a bit
working
more.
and it's pulling that way. What you're looking for as a result of that burring is probably damage on the opposite side cutters. So you need to have a look at the cutters down the side here, and that's where sometimes you can find there'll be damage to the side, the chrome on the side of the cutter, that prevents that from clearing the side of the cut, so it makes the chain lead to the opposite side, which in turn wears the rail and creates that burring.
What's your advice at that stage? Do you
up short.
say new blade, new bar, or can you dress the bar?
No, look, that bar would be quite retrievable. We have a blenishing machine that we can regrind these rails and get them square so that the top rails are perpendicular to the side. Just keep grinding it down until you get rid of that unevenness. There's a limitation to that though, because the the depth of the groove has to be maintained so that the drive teeth, which are these guys, they can't bottom out. The groove is only so deep, and it has a bit of a margin for wear, but there is enough there that you can take a certain amount off here and still have it so that the depth, the drive teeth have a clearance in the bottom of the groove. So they can be machined, usually
Is that
a couple
that's
of
what you
times.
call the bottom of the tooth, the one that's hanging under? That's a
That's
drive
the
tooth.
drive link, yeah.
Right,
Link, yeah.
drive
so
link.
that actually wraps around the sprocket.
Okay, so that's like in a slot car set. That's what holds it onto the track.
That's what holds it into the bar, and that's what drives it. Yeah. So the sprocket, which we've got.
All right, yeah. I saw you had some beautiful sprockets here
got a
earlier.
couple of lovely
Yeah, give me a second. I'll pass them over to you.
Got a couple of beauties here. These are a couple that I salvaged out of the scrap bin just to show
All right, we're still on this camera here.
the various stages of wear. So that sits on the crankshaft of the engine, and oops, not drop that. So that's how it profiles around there.
Down a
That's
bit,
what
down a
drives it. Oops, sorry.
Yep, you're
That's how
right.
it drives. This one, you can see the marks quite clearly where the chain's been running on this one. It's got probably the best part of maybe 3/4 of a millimetre of wear into that spur. That spur should not normally have those grooves worn into it. That sprocket would be a normal replacement. If you were servicing that machine and you saw that amount of wear, that would be definitely worn enough to
And
replace.
I was talking to you earlier about that. That drive sprocket is also the outside of the centrifugal clutch.
That's correct, yeah. The clutch shoes sit inside there, and they're spring-loaded affair. So as the engine speed increases, the clutch shoes throw out, and that's what imparts the drive to that drum. I've brought a saw up to just show a little bit more about that in a minute. We'll get
Right.
to those. But yeah, that one's pretty bad. That one's really bad. You can see, let me get that round the right
Yep.
way. You can see how badly that's
It's
cut
nearly
through
cut
through the top of the spurs.
Yeah.
And this one is one we've got lots of laughs out of. It's not even connected anymore. It's actually
Oh, dear.
cut right through.
Yep.
So
And he
this-
was still trying to go,
and-
still trying to
yeah,
cut wood.
And the poor fellow said, "Look, I don't know what's going on, but this poor saw just does not cut."
Did he
And,
get back in his car and start playing his banjo?
So yeah, there's something to watch out for. And the chain sprockets are a normal wear and tear item, just like the chain and the bar. They need to be replaced. Typical life for a sprocket, depending on what sort of wood you're cutting, they recommend changing a sprocket, every sort of 3 chains, like the life of 3 chains
Huh.
to a sprocket.
I did not know that.
Yeah, replace those.
All right, I'm going to. My mouse is over the other side. What am I doing? I'm a terrible director here. I'm trying to get an image of you rather than of what's happening right in front of you, and because everyone's going to get bored. Just look, there we go.
Okay.
We got you back again.
So a couple of other things. So I'll just quickly take this jig off. Done with that for the moment. Pop that out of the way. Take this chain off.
Yep. On a busy day, Ian, how many chains would you sharpen during, say, the beginning of winter?
Look,
A lot.
yeah,
That's the
terrible
answer. A lot.
I'm just trying to think. I've been sharpening chains pretty much all day today, but on and off with answering phones and speaking to customers. I think I've sharpened about 20 chains today.
Yeah.
But in the and we've been very busy with it because
That's $100 at $5 a chain. Isn't that what you charge?
$5 a chain. Don't make it any worse than it already is.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, we're currently quite busy with it at the moment, which might seem strange, us being in the middle of summer. But we've just had lots of bushfire activity around the place, and people are cutting all sorts of horrible burnt trees. And
Yeah.
we've also had a
So the carbon
local-
in the burnt sections would really
Yeah.
play on the
the
labour,
carbon.
wouldn't
The carbon is just like cutting concrete; it just
Yeah.
destroys a chain
it?
very
Just
quickly.
pre-diamond.
So, and of course, the council have had an amnesty on green waste so that people can clean up and get rid of the rubbish at the rubbish tip.
Yep.
So everybody's been working their chainsaws really hard. So we've been very busy with it
Yes.
on
Yeah.
top of our normal summer activities.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But look, in winter time, we might sharpen sort of anywhere between 20 and 30 chains in a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes more if we get, if I get my son involved, if he's helping me.
Yep.
It just depends on the workload at the time.
Right.
It's
What ab-
probably the most. It's the single least profitable part of what we do. The sharpening chains. We
Yeah.
charge for say a 20-inch chain, like a 20-inch chain like that one. We charge $17 to sharpen it,
That's
and
not
that's
much.
through the depth gauges and everything. And that operation takes start to finish about 20 minutes. We don't even make hourly rate at $17, but we do it as a service to our customers, and hopefully they keep coming back and buying other things from us. So,
Yep. I can see that.
so that's the story with those. Now,
What are we gonna
this-
do next?
This, I'm just going to show you a couple of things about this guide bar that can give you a clue as to some of the other things going on. This one also has been run
Do you want me
very.
to switch the cameras back again, or you're right?
Yeah, no, I'll just bring it up to the other one. I'll just take this off because I need this out of the
I'll
way.
move this out of the way.
Bring it up the front. Show them there's a couple of clues on this that give you a bit of an idea about something else that's going on
Right.
with the saw. You can see it up here. This section of the
Look at the screen.
yeah, this
Up
section
you go. Up you go.
the
There you go.
section of the bar there, it's got a little bit of a dip in it, and the same here. If you've got a bar that is demonstrating that sort of damage, where you're getting a bit of a scalloping here, it's because the drive sprocket at the other end that we were just talking about, that drive sprocket
Yes.
is worn sufficiently that the chain's not revolving smoothly. So if you've got a sprocket that's worn like one of these guys, when it's rotating the chain would be going tight, like tight, loose as it revolves.
Yep.
And that's because the sprocket's worn. And as it's doing that, it's causing a slapping effect as the chain is coming around the tip of the guide
Right.
bar. And that causes a wearing in at this point here. The other thing that it does, I'll just have to put my glasses on just to find it again. You can see the chipping on the edge there, just near my wedding ring there. There's a huge,
Yeah, I can see it.
huge chunk where it's chipped out. That is also as a direct result of a worn sprocket. So that slapping effect that I was trying to show you there before, that slapping effect is just like a hammering taking place on that hardened surface. And these rails, on a good quality bar, these rails are flame hardened, and you can actually see the difference in the colouring for about 10 millimetres down the length of that bar, where that rail is actually flame hardened. So, yeah, those little things. If you see those things, they're a telltale sign that you've got a worn sprocket, and you're going to end up
And
with one of those needing replacing.
it's going to be more costly for the person not replacing the sprocket.
Yeah, well, it's not going to cut efficiently. It's going to damage the guide bar.
Correct. So,
So yeah,
that's where I'm headed.
it's just a domino effect. Yeah. So a little bit of maintenance goes a long way.
Yep.
One of the other things on guide bars, just on a maintenance thing too, a lot of times we see machines coming in that have got a lot, and I've left this one intact. This one's got bits of rubbish stuck to the mounting face where that clamps up to the face of the
Yes.
the crankcase on the saw over the studs. That face needs to be relatively clean because it is only metal to metal mating surface. If you've got any bits of sawdust and rubbish and stuff that are going to get jammed between there, you're not going to get oil transferring into the tiny little oil hole.
Ah,
There's a little
right.
oil hole there.
Okay, I thought it might have just been putting the chain off out of kilter a bit, but it's
No.
the lubrication of the
It's
bar is also.
lubrication, yeah. It's just that tiny little hole there, and that's where the oil feed that lubricates the chain comes through.
Right.
These guide bars are double drilled, so you've got one on both sides, the same location. If that's not held firmly against the face of the crankcase, you won't get the oil transfer in there that the chain needs to stop it from wearing out.
Yep.
So cleaning that face and the mating face on the saw is very important also.
Cool.
Um,
What's the next thing you
that's,
got there?
yeah, that's just.
You wanna get the
that
big
one.
gun
I was
out,
gonna-
or-
I was just going to bring the big girl up and we'll
Okay.
just throw some of this stuff aside out of the way and give yourself a bit of fighting
Yep.
space.
In the meantime, whilst you're doing that, I'll let people know that there's this thing is coming up this month. This is the TTTG, which is, remind me, Ian, this is the thing that you go to buy all your planes, isn't it?
The traditional
Traditional
tool
tool
group.
group.
Yeah,
So
true.
the is the first T. So
That's correct.
TTT. So the first one is the. I thought they would have just had TTG.
Yeah, no, the
Uh-huh.
traditional tool group. And
Yep.
it's a terrific group of guys from all sorts of trades, and they have all manner of tools and all just an amazing amount of knowledge.
It's February at the Brick Pit at Thornley, Brick Pit Sport Area, and it's on the 23rd of February. But no one will be going, obviously, because that's my show will be on at that time. But honestly, go along to it. I'm going to try and get to it as well.
Yeah, look, they have some fantastic bargains there. They have people that have tools for sale from all sorts of various organisations. There's people from Lions clubs that get donated, a shed
so
full
you can
of
pick
tools.
up a bargain.
There's some absolute bargains.
All right.
I might be guilty of having
Are you going
taken
down?
advantage of a few of those
Are you gonna
bargains. I don't know that I'll be available to go this time. I may do. I'm not sure.
Would you want me to just give me a couple $100 and I'll sort you out? I'll get a couple of things for you.
Look, I can get myself into trouble. Well
Oh,
enough.
no, I'm just trying to help. Just trying to help.
Look, one other little thing on the sharpening scene that I
Yep.
forgot to mention. This is this is the latest and greatest from Stihl. They've been out in the marketplace for a little while. This is what's still called their 2-in-1 sharpener. This is the very simplest way for guys to be able to do a quick sharpen in the field. It has 2 round files, so you've got 1 round file on each side,
Yes.
and you've got a central square flat file. And the idea of that is that you sit that across. I should have had my demo piece there, but
You know what? I'm going to get the other camera because I think we need to have a nice close-up look at this one.
I'll just
So-
use the.
I'll do the squitch, the Rooney. Can you see where you are there? Okay,
Okay, so yeah, that's all right.
that's good.
So yeah, I'll just pretend that's got a chain on it. So we're going from David's side. You're always following away from the saw itself. So the saw engine is this side where my
Yes,
left hand is.
yep.
So you're sharpening that way, doing the cutters on that side, and then turn it end for end, and you do
Pushing
cutters
towards me now.
on this side in that direction.
Yep.
The benefit of this device is that it allows you to sharpen the cutter, but also, if necessary, the central square file takes the depth gauge down the required height because of the placement of the file.
So
in the jig.
0.65 of a millimetre.
So it does it automatically, and it's a very, very simple device. Your 30-degree angle is determined by the handle,
Yes.
so that just lines up with your guide bar, and it just makes the whole process very, very simple. The end cap unclips and allows access to the files. The files are replaceable. It's a good idea occasionally just to take them out and just turn them a little bit,
Alright.
just to share the wear out on the file, and get a bit more life out of the file. The files are fully replaceable. You can just buy new ones when they're worn out.
Now these ones aren't tapered at all. They're not a rat's tail file. Is that
No,
right?
parallel file.
Parallel.
Yeah, a parallel file, just
Okay.
for sharpening chainsaw chains. And yeah, this one is a parallel square file, but it only has teeth on top and bottom sides.
And how many different types of blade would that do?
Okay, well, these are size specific. The diameter of the file
Yes.
is relative to the chain pitch
Yes.
and type.
Yep.
So you have a 3.1 millimeter file for the little baby, for the little quarter pitch chains. That takes the 3.1.
Yep.
You go up from there to the Pico, which uses a 4 millimeter file. Then you go to 0.325 millimeter chain. That takes a 4.8, and then the larger ones are 5.2 millimeter in diameter.
Right.
And there's a specific jig for each file size. So
Right.
if you have different size saws, you need to have one of these for each size saw.
Yep.
To suit the right chain.
Cool.
So
All right.
very,
Hang on.
very, very popular. They've been available for quite some time. We've only had them for probably the last 3 years, I guess, in Australia, but they were available in the States and Europe a little way earlier than that. But yeah, great tool.
And
Very
do
quick.
just as good a job as Ian at the service station or not?
Yeah, look, they can do if
Yep.
if you've got a good eye and you can
Yes.
keep that nice and straight. Yeah, there's no reason why you can't. No reason at all. But yeah,
Lovely.
we don't file. Obviously, it takes too long for us to
Yeah.
file them. So
Oh.
we do them with the machine.
There you go. I've got a quick question for you then.
Yep.
You know those little things you can put on a 12-volt battery? You know, a little
Yep.
grinding wheel on the
Yeah.
end with
Yeah,
a little
like a
flat bar on it.
Like a
Do
little
they
Dremel.
kill? Do they kill blades or are they any good?
No, look, they're fine. the only problem with them is because they are so small.
Yeah.
Unless you're fairly careful with cleaning your chain and getting rid of the oily sawdust and varnish and stuff out of it, they do
Clag up.
clag up very, very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do a job. Yeah, they do
Yeah.
a job, and they can be quite effective.
Doesn't get them too
Effective.
hot or anything like that. Doesn't
Oh,
take
look.
the temper out of the blade.
Look, it can do. You can, but generally the stones are a bit brittle because they're only so tiny.
Yeah.
If you put too much force on them, you'll snap the stone.
Right.
But yeah, with grinding a chain, like the machines that we use, we just go at it very, very quietly. So we're not just ripping into it. We're just touching it very, very gently so we don't overheat that cutter
Yes.
and don't lose the temper out of the metal. If whoever's sharpening your chain sends them back and they're blue or black,
They're
they're not doing the job right.
Okay. Now, are you learning anything? Is there anything that Ian has said that you've thought, of course, or I didn't know that? I know that there's a lot of people that'll be watching at the moment who'll be saying, look, I know how to sharpen a chainsaw. I've been doing it since I was
Forever.
on the
Yeah.
breast.
Yeah,
Almost. What do you say to them?
The object of the exercise today is for people that don't have the experience or the knowledge.
Yep.
We're not trying to teach anybody how to suck eggs.
No.
If you already know it all, well, that's great. That's
Yep.
fantastic.
But you might pick something up.
We get a lot of people that come in that have no clue at all and they have no source of reference, so they depend on us to be able to show them what to do.
Yep. You did mention to me a few weeks ago that you see other people that don't have a clue. And one particular person you mentioned, I don't think you actually told me their name because I don't think
No,
you knew
I
them.
wouldn't have.
But, but he drove out of the hardware store with timber in the back of the station wagon and also resting in his trailer.
That's right. Yeah, he had what would probably have been 4.8 or 5.2 metre lengths of framing timber that he'd
Yep.
securely lashed to his trailer and stuck the end of it through into the station wagon with the tailgate open
Yep.
and drove out
Came around the corner.
and wondered why there was this god almighty crack from the back of the car.
I shouldn't talk, should I? Well, I bet you we all make stupid mistakes, but things like when you hear something like that, it makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
we see some very funny things. Having a Bunnings store right across
All the way up.
road,
Yep, that's it.
we see some very, very suspect loading.
This is a pretty handy bench you've got here, Ian.
It's awesome.
Ah, can't tell you. Mentioning that, I'll be at the not Canberra, the Brisbane Timber Tools and Artisans show. People have asked me if I'd be going there. I think they've just started advertising the show, and I will be talking to the organisers and try and get 5 double passes for the show as well. I think it's March, towards the end of March. I think mid to end. I just check on Facebook and Instagram, and you should be able to find it there. The closer it gets up, we'll run a raffle copter competition. Also, in the description box below, I'm doing another raffle copter giveaway from Reptiler for a set of eye muffs. And let me see if I can find the blue ones here. There we go. So a set of these, whatever colour you choose. And you know how long I've been using mine. I reckon they're fantastic. All right, what have we got here? What's this baby? This is a tiny little saw, isn't it?
This is my pride and joy. This is
Your pride
my
and joy.
Still MS661 Magnum.
Magnum. Do you have to
This
grow a
what-
big moustache?
This is what we call a proper bloke saw in Australia.
Right,
If you want a proper saw,
that's the one.
this is the baby.
What size bar can this Magnum take?
This comes with a 25-inch bar on it.
Mhm.
I run a 20, a 25, and I've also got a 36-inch bar that I use in my Alaskan mill for some slabbing work that I do.
Right.
And yeah, it just powers along.
How long have
through
you
it.
had this one for, Ian?
I've had this for about 4 years now.
And it
Right.
looks like it's fresh out of the box.
Made well, yeah, you know it pretty much is. Except I loaned it to a very good mate who
Wasn't
should
me.
have known better. No, it wasn't Dave. It wasn't Dave. Loaned it to a very good mate. And it wasn't Macca either, by
No.
the way. Who borrowed it, and he knew it was brand new. It had only done about 5 hours at the time, and it came back with a broken decompressor valve, which I was. Just
Bit-
broke the corner of it. Something's dropped on it and hit it, and it wasn't like that when it went out. I'll
No.
tell you.
No.
So anyway,
Yeah, I have a little bit of a thing
Rule
where
number one,
I don't lend,
don't lend your chainsaw.
especially to friends, because they're not going to be friends anymore after it if there's something stuffs up. It's just bad news.
But I brought this up. I was just going to show quickly where the clutch and the clutch sprocket lives.
All right.
For
Is this the
A bit of
biggest that still
information.
makes or not?
no, there's one above this. There's the MS880, which
Right.
is a fair monster. It's 121 cc's capacity. It's just
It's a motorbike motor in it.
yeah, it's a monster.
Right. And how many cc's is this one?
These are
Come on here.
96, I think it is.
Okay. So a Honda step through.
Yeah, to leave on to step through for dead. Okay, so this one's got the sprockets we were looking at before are a spur type sprocket. This one has what we call a rim type or a floating rim type sprocket. Still does the same job, but supports the chain a little bit better because it's supported on a circular rim.
Around this side again. And I'm going to get this camera happening again because this is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. If you can. Give me a second. I'll switch the cameras again. Okay, can you see it there, Ian? It's on the left-hand side.
Yep.
Coming across.
That's good.
That's it.
So this is a circular form. This is a floating rim, and you see the grooves where the chain drive teeth actually slot into it. So it allows the chain to self-align on the splines, and because it's supported on a circular rim, the chain's better supported and gives better chain speed, better chain life, and its major advantage is that it's very easily replaced. So to replace that rim when it wears, it's simply a case of taking the circlip out, take that out, and make sure you hang on to it. When you're taking that off, make sure you have your finger at the back of it, because we have a particular name in the shop, which I know we've got young viewers watching, so I won't say it, but
No.
it's a what's it clip,
Okay.
because it's where did that go
Go on.
when it comes off? Yeah.
Do you have a
So-
spare packet of them?
I've got dozens of them. So
Find them in the sweep up?
that little washer, which is stepped, that
Yes.
goes with it, and that is the actual rim. So you can see the grooves where the drive links of the chain drop in, and that just self-centers on the splines on the clutch drum. So that's a replaceable part and a wearing part. You'll see this saw's done, I think it's done around about 15 hours of actual work now, and you can actually see a tiny little bit of wear in
Bring
the
it back,
surface.
back down to what was here, because then it'll focus properly. That's a bit better.
Yeah. You can see just a tiniest little bit of wear where the chain is creating a bit of an indent in that surface.
Yep.
And that's fine. That's still quite okay. One of the signs that indicates that needs to be replaced is that the tips of the drive teeth will be marking in between these splines. You'll see that the tang on the bottom of the drive link will actually leave a shiny spot there. So if you've got
Spin
a
the saw around this way so we can look down there. There.
if you've
That
got
any easier?
if you've got a use a pointer. If you've got a shiny spot occurring down here between the splines, that's an indicator that your rim is worn and that needs to be replaced. The other thing that's a maintenance item on these, on every saw pretty much, is that bearing that just fell out. It's all right. It's all right. We've got it. Got it. Little needle roller bearing. That doesn't really do a lot of work most of the time. It only works when the saw's idling, because the crankshaft and the clutch are turning. The chain, when the saw's idling, the chain should be stationary, and subsequently the clutch
Yeah.
drum shouldn't be turning. So it's only when it's idling that does any work. You take that out occasionally and put a smear of any kind of decent quality bearing grease on that.
So high temperature bearing?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
any sort of bearing
Okay.
grease, like a wheel bearing grease, anything really is fine. It doesn't hang around very long. For centrifugal force tends to throw a lot of it
Yep.
out, but if you put it in there with a bit, it can do its thing. The other thing that you'll find when you go to take that drum off, a lot of time we find that, and I've left this to show everybody, you'll find where these clutch shoes engage inside the drum. Whether that's showing up there, I'm going to turn it around.
Yeah.
There's a light there. Let's put that down.
That's better.
You can see a shiny mark there in the bottom. That's where the clutch shoes are engaging, and either side of that is a build-up
Bring
of...
it down near here. There's a high contrast part there. There. That's fine.
Just trying to get the light. Oops. the light around the right spot.
It'll be easier on bigger
Yeah.
screens when people are watching.
You get quite a build-up of oily sawdust and so forth that can become quite hard, and it can actually make it quite difficult to remove that from the engine. Oftentimes what we have to do is to actually get a pair of vice grips and
Yep.
grip hold of that and twist it and pull it at the same time.
Is that like the old days with drum brakes and the shoes getting
Sim-
bedded in or they're worn down too far and you've got a lip
Yeah.
there?
That's right, it's the same sort of thing, but
Yeah.
in this case it's just caused by rubbish build-up, which breaks away if you
Yeah.
give it a little bit of elbow grease. Now on the majority of steel machines, they have that little cutaway. You can see that right there. Now that little cutaway is the engagement point for the oil pump drive tang, which is in behind the clutch shoes, and the oil pump drive runs off the back of the clutch, and it's driven from a wire and turns a helical gear that drives the oil pump, which is in the back here. The point of all that is that when you're putting this back on, obviously you've got to make sure that that engages with the wire.
It's like lining up a lens on a digital SLR.
So you sit that back in place, and you
Yep.
can see straight away it's wanting to sit up here. So
Yep.
the tang's around there. The notch in the sprocket is signified by that little marker.
Yep.
So
I can
because
see that.
you can very rarely ever see the thing because it's buried down in the darkness there.
Yep. So you
But
just
you can
keep
see where
rotating
it's
until
sitting
it's
you can see where it's sitting up high. So the idea is to just turn that around.
until it gets it. Not quite there yet, Ian. This way. You got your specs on?
There it is, right there.
They're
It's dropped
just
down. Yeah, no problem. It's more a feel thing.
Yeah.
So grease the bearing up and
Yep.
then put the bearing in from the outside. Now the reason for doing that is that any surplus grease that you apply to the bearing is going to go on the outside.
Not on your clutch plates.
If you put that onto the crankshaft and then try and put the sprocket over it, you're pushing all that surplus grease off, which is immediately going to
Yep.
throw over onto the inside of your clutch drum.
Yep.
So grease that bearing up and put it in from the outside. Push that down. Make sure that's still sitting square.
And the circlip and the stepped washer.
But before we do that, we've got to put that fella back
Yep.
on. So that goes back on. Stepped washer. And then the circlip. And again, important to hold that while you get your slip joint pliers in the right spot. Just put your finger over the top of it and snap that into place, and that's all good.
Excellent.
Now, what I didn't show you while I had that off, if you've got a chain that's kicking around while the saw is idling, the chain should be stationary. If you've got a saw that the chain is constantly going when the saw is idling, one or two things is happening. Either A, your idle speed is too high.
Yes.
If you're happy that the idle speed's alright, it means that the clutch springs have become weak, and they become weak by heat generated from excessive use of chain brakes. As the chain brake wraps around that clutch drum and locks
Right.
it, and the clutch is trying to turn against it, so
Yep.
it generates a lot of heat, and that heat's what softens the return springs on the clutch. They're a little $1.50 item. There's 3 of them, and we would, whenever we're servicing a saw, we always check them and make sure
Yeah.
they're not worn or heat affected, and replace them if necessary. But yeah, if you've got a chain kicking around at idle, that's what you need to do, is just take that drum off, replace those 3 clutch springs.
Lovely.
The,
All right.
the other bits and pieces of service we've sort of covered pretty well in the other show
Yep.
that we did when we covered fuel filters and air filters and all that sort of stuff.
Well, we've
So-
just come up to 58 minutes.
So,
So the time kicks on, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, put this aside. I've got a
Yep.
couple of little. I've got, my fetish with Turner stuff.
Yeah, I'll switch over to the other camera again.
I bought a few little Turner treasures up.
Right. So you're going to get the
Rag, and I'll just wipe
yeah,
the
just
oil
that.
off there.
nothing.
Thanks. I'll get in trouble off the teacher for leaving it
No,
next to
no,
the
no, it's
bench.
fine, it's fine. I did clean it off though first before you came here, so I could see anything like that. There's a scratch there.
Well, you can remember that was caused by
Yeah.
661.
Yeah, great.
So,
All right, I'm going to switch over to this side. Do you want me to get the? Or are you going to leave that one down there for me?
I wasn't actually going to, no. But you might like to bring it up
There's
for
a-
everyone to have a look at.
I'll just go and get this thing that. I'll leave that there, Ian, and you can keep on chatting.
You can take the camera down and take a picture of it in place if you like.
Well, I can throw a picture up any time, but if I leave that there, it might be able to hear you.
I've got I've just brought up a couple of items out of my little collection of Turner bits and pieces, just only just curiosity. There's nothing special about them. It's just a hacksaw, but it's made by Turner in Australia. It used to have a Turner blade in it, but unfortunately that broke, and now I've got a Stanley Australia blade in it. But yeah, just a nice little addition, and a number of different screwdrivers that Turner made, going right back to a couple of lovely old wooden handled varieties,
That's pretty cool.
all made by Turner. And
They all look the same shape just about as
Yeah.
the plastic ones.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, not plastic. Cellulose acetate.
they are, yeah. That fella, anyone in Australia that's ever had an early model Holden would probably be very familiar with that. Every Holden made from about 1956 through to about 65 or 66 had one of those in its toolkit, and they're a very handy size. Just happened to be the right size to fit the set screw on the ignition points, so it was quite a handy thing to have. But yeah, a range of different screwdrivers that they made, different colours, and some of the old wooden ones, which had Turner Manufacturing Australia stamped into the ferrule on here. These have seen a fair bit of wear and tear, and you can just barely make it out. It is still there.
Yep.
Another couple of little oddities. Just a T-handled Turner, a little T-handle that was built into it, hexagonal shank,
Well, they do that
Quite-
with some in socket sets as well. These
quite
days,
handy for awkward spots, and a little double ender. Again, the same classic Turner handle style, straight blade one end and Phillips the other. That
I've
was
seen those.
quite an interesting one, and this was one that was done as a motorist package. It's got a removable reamer for enlarging holes, and it's also two flat blades, two different flat blade sizes, and a Phillips head that all plug into the same base.
Right, I'm going to switch the cameras again because people want to see what else is coming. Hold on. Where are we? And switch her in. There you go. You can see it all laid out on the table.
Now this
In and show and tell.
this is a bit of a unit. This was originally came from a government stores sale. Turner Renly screwdrivers. Now, these were made for the Department of Defence. Oh, that's a ring in. That was from the last show.
Yep.
These are all brand spanking new. These are not rusty. These are actually coated in a rust preventative sort of a lacquer. These screwdrivers are all brand spanking new and all stamped Turner Manufacturing. Solid shaft.
Blade all the way through. Sorry.
Yeah,
the shaft
blade all the way through, so you can belt the hell out of it. You know, they're made for carpenters.
Yep. Good.
These were made from about 1939 onwards. They were made for Department of Defence, and on some of them you can actually see the Department of Defence logo. It's got
Right.
the D. I have to.
That's better.
You can see D, which is Department of Defence insignia. So they were made by Turner, and yeah, very nifty little piece of gear.
That's lovely.
So that, oh yeah, and this other little thing that I brought along too, possibly rarer than a Stanley number 1.
Yep.
A 220 Turner, complete, with cellulose acetate handle.
Now, I did not realise that's got to be the tallest knob I've seen on a block plane.
Yeah.
I've never seen one as tall as that.
They're secured by it has a metal thread tapping in the base,
Yes.
and it's got a double-ended stud, so it's got a metal thread on one end
Right.
and a wood screw thread on the other end that
Yes.
screws into that.
Yep.
And that's been securely Loctited on there now, so it doesn't move. Original blade, never been honed or sharpened. It's
So tell me the story about this blade. And you told me today that you actually took it out from, I don't know, some kind of vault in Moscow or something.
yeah, the blade, because the blade hadn't been used.
Yes.
I took it out of the plane and I wrapped it up in G15. Jim Davy'd be proud of me.
Because you were.
Drowned it in G15, wrapped it in plastic, put a cardboard envelope over that and taped that all up and put that away in the cupboard so it doesn't rust. But I took it out today to bring it along for the show because
That's
I just thought I'd sort of rub a bit of salt in with Dave to put it up on his display board with his other Turner planes, seeing as that's the only one
We
he's
did
got
that,
missing.
and I took a couple of photos too, so I might throw those up on Instagram over the week. Because that's the full set. That is the absolute full set with the ones that I've got there.
This little guy, quite a strange way it came about. I found this plane at a local market, the Lawson, which is just up the road from where Dave
Magpie
lives.
Markets, yep.
The Magpie Market. So I spotted it on a table there. It was minus the blade, but the rest of it was there, and it had a $9 price tag on it.
And you haggled him, didn't you?
And no, I didn't haggle him. I nearly tripped over myself to get $10 out of my wallet before anybody else
And
spotted
how much
it.
is that plane worth these days, roughly?
I really have no idea, but
North of $1,000?
oh, that wouldn't be that much. No, wouldn't be that much. But yeah, probably a couple $100.
Yeah.
But very, very hard to find. And yeah,
And so how'd you find the blade?
George Radian, who is a tool seller who he's in Victoria. He had it advertised on eBay. I just happened to spot it and
Lovely.
paid a few dollars more than I paid for the plane, but yeah, it was what I needed, and
That's
it's
exactly
a beauty.
right.
So yeah, that's the story of that one. So yeah, great little keeper, and yeah, it'll just be. I'll take it back home and spray it all up with G15 and put it away where it lives.
Yeah, so no one can see it. Have you taken a photo of it again before you put it away?
I was actually thinking I might even have to place an order for a tool board because
Ah,
I have got the complete set.
yeah. It doesn't look too bad, does it? It's
No, it
come
looks
up
great.
well.
Yeah, it looks really
I'm
good.
very happy with it.
Very good.
All right, let me see what we've got here. So Ian Carey is the guest. Thank you very much, Ian, for coming along
Yeah, welcome.
and going through. You went in way past what I thought you were going to talk about as far as the saws are concerned, but interesting stuff as far as maintenance is concerned with those roller bearings, the sprocket on the drive, on the clutch plate. The things that also surprised me big time was the oil weep holes in the blade. I did not know there was weep holes. I thought it was just a felt area at the back that
No.
oil was deposited on.
No, it's important to get oil flow through
Yeah,
there.
definitely. You answered the question for Peter Woolworth, the Stihl USG grinder for chain and hedge trimmer blades. Use it for hedge trimmer blades as
Yes,
well?
it's
Yep.
got an adapter. You take off the supporting frame that holds the chain. You
Yep.
take that complete cradle off, and there's a different cradle mounts on there to do the hedge cutter blades.
Right.
Actually takes longer to do a hedge cutter blade than it does to do a sharpen a saw chain. They're
Right.
fiddly damn things.
So what was the other thing? The Rafflecopter this week for the IMUFs International. So knock yourselves out. Go on there. Go on down into the description box. Click the link. And what else? What's happening in your shed? If you can send some stuff in for us to have a look at. And we will have in another 4 weeks' time, I think we'll have the editor of the Australian Woodsmith joining me on the show, and he wants to do some box work. I did give that little box to my grandson, and I showed Ian a video of him receiving it. We have a little kind of a Christmas at Australia Day because we let all the in-laws go and do all their thing, and then we have a day for Australia Day. And as I say, he was over the moon with it. So I think that's about it. Thanks again to all of the Patreons that I have and everyone who's using the links in the description box below. That does help me keep motivated and keep doing the show. I think that is about it. I will get this other one up here ready. I think that's it there. And I'm going to say goodbye to Ian. Thank you very much, Ian,
Thanks,
for coming
Dave.
up and doing
Thanks
this
for
for
the
us.
opportunity, and I hope
And-
everybody learnt something from all that.
Oh, yeah. Well, the ones that have stayed awake,
Yeah,
they will
that's
have
right.
learned something.
That's right.
And look after yourselves, be nice to each other, and I shall see you next week. Bye.
All the best.